Capricorn, it feels like something in your life is beginning to shift, very slowly, but very clearly. And as I sat down with the energy of this tarot reading, what came through the strongest was some sudden explosion of change overnight. It felt more like a quiet door beginning to open after a season where you've had to carry far too much on your own. Some of you are starting to look at your life differently now. Differently when it comes to work. Differently when it comes to what actually matters to you anymore. Differently when it comes to the kind of future you truly want to keep building toward. And the strange thing is, opportunities that felt frozen for a very long time suddenly seem to be moving again. Very subtly at first, but enough for you to feel it. So before we go deeper into this reading together, leave a small comment below. I'm ready for a new chapter, because I honestly feel like a lot of Capricorns are no longer interested in simply surviving anymore. You're starting to want a life that actually feels peaceful to wake up to. And I think this reading begins right there. Capricorn, it feels like something in your life is beginning to move, very slowly, but very clearly. And as I sat down with the energy of this tarot reading, what came through the strongest wasn't some massive breakthrough all at once. It felt more like a door that's been closed for a very long time, finally starting to open little by little. Like after spending so much time just pushing through, handling responsibilities, moving from one problem to the next, you're beginning to realize you can't stay in survival mode forever. Some of you have been genuinely exhausted lately, not just tired after a long day. The kind of exhaustion that quietly builds over months. Sitting in your car after work for a few extra minutes before going inside. Your phone lights up and you just don't have the energy to answer anybody else. A quiet room at the end of the night, but your mind still won't fully rest. And the thing about Capricorn is, a lot of people around you probably have no idea how drained you've actually been, because you're so good at holding everything together, so good at continuing to move forward even when your inner world is running on almost nothing. But the Four of Swords card comes through here like a pause life almost forced you into. Not exactly failure, not completely standing still either. More just like a season where your mind and body have been trying to recover from carrying too much pressure for too long. And I think there's something Capricorn has slowly been realizing lately. Not every version of success is worth sacrificing your peace for. Some goals that once meant everything to you don't hit the same anymore. Some things you thought would finally make you happy once you reached them now just feel exhausting to chase the old way. And honestly, that doesn't mean you're lost. It may simply mean an older version of you no longer fits who you're becoming, because the Eight of Wands card carries a very different kind of energy here. This doesn't feel like slow change stretched across years. It feels more like movement returning after a long freeze. Emails getting answered faster. One unexpected conversation opening a new opportunity. An old idea suddenly coming back to you while driving or sitting quietly by the window late at night. Like life is gently reminding you, there are still parts of your story that aren't finished yet. And what I really like about this energy is that it's not asking Capricorn to become a completely different person overnight. It's simply pulling you out of a state of exhaustion you've been sitting in for too long, little by little. The Queen of Wands card comes through here and immediately makes me think about reclaiming your personal light again. Not in a loud way, not in a look at me kind of way. More like remembering who you are when your entire life isn't built around pressure anymore. There's a quiet confidence returning here. You may not talk about it much yet. Other people may not fully see it yet either. But somewhere inside, Capricorn is beginning to feel the desire to live for yourself again. To try a different path. To make money in a way that doesn't leave you emotionally depleted all the time. To build a life where waking up in the morning no longer feels so heavy. And the Sun card at the end of this energy feels incredibly beautiful to me. Not because it promises that every problem disappears. Honestly, this reading doesn't feel like that at all. It feels more like after walking through gray weather for a very long time, Capricorn is finally starting to see light ahead again. Maybe it comes through a new work opportunity, a different financial direction, a healthier environment, or maybe it's simply the fact that you're allowing yourself to think about the future with a softer heart than before. And I honestly think the biggest shift here isn't happening in your outer circumstances right away. It's happening in the way Capricorn no longer wants to live just to survive anymore. You're beginning to want your life to actually mean something to you. To feel peaceful, to feel spacious, to feel like you can finally breathe again. Some people around you may not fully understand why your perspective on work, money, or relationships has been changing lately. But after everything you've carried, Capricorn is beginning to understand that a truly stable life is not a life where you constantly have to suffer through it. And that's also where the energy of this tarot reading starts opening into something deeper. A place where Capricorn is no longer thinking only about surviving tomorrow, but starting to seriously imagine what life could look like a few years from now. And honestly, I think that may be the biggest shift happening for Capricorn right now. Not the desire to make more money, not the need to become more successful than everyone else, but for the first time in a very long time, you're seriously thinking about the kind of life you actually want to keep living long term. The King of Pentacles card comes through with such mature energy here. This no longer feels like rushing forward because of pressure or fear of falling behind. It feels more like someone who has traveled far enough in life to understand that real stability cannot be built by slowly draining yourself every single day. I think a lot of Capricorns are changing the way they look at money, work, and even success itself. Maybe in the past you told yourself, just push a little longer. Once things calm down, I'll finally rest. One day when everything feels stable, I'll start living for myself. But the older Capricorn gets, the more you begin to notice that some people spend their entire lives chasing a stable future, only to forget what it actually feels like to live while they're doing it. And I don't think you want that anymore. The Three of Pentacles card makes me feel like this is a season where Capricorn is beginning to rebuild life in a much smarter way than before. No longer trying to carry everything alone. No longer feeling like you have to prove your worth through exhaustion. You're starting to understand that your value depends on where your energy goes. Skills you once viewed as just normal may suddenly become the very thing that opens a completely different path for you. Some Capricorns may start thinking about building something independently, creating a personal brand, expanding the work you already do, or simply taking a talent you ignored for years more seriously now. And what's interesting is, this energy doesn't feel rushed at all. It feels very Capricorn, slow, observant, intentional. But once you decide to build something, you want it to last. And the Nine of Pentacles card makes that even clearer. There's such a strong image that comes to mind when I look at this card. It feels like someone finally stepping inside the house of their own life, instead of standing outside fixing the roof for everyone else. Capricorn has always been the type of person people lean on. You think ahead, carry more than most people realize, quietly take responsibility without needing recognition for it. But sometimes, that also makes you forget that you deserve care too. The Nine of Pentacles card isn't just about money. It's about the quality of your life. It's about beginning to want an environment that actually allows you to breathe again, a quieter room, a job that doesn't drain your spirit every single day, a life where you're not constantly waiting for the next thing to collapse. And honestly, that isn't selfish. That's Capricorn beginning to understand that real stability doesn't live only inside a bank account. It also lives in your nervous system, in your sleep, in the feeling of peace when you're finally alone with yourself. The Two of Wands card brings in a very different feeling. It's like a new door is beginning to appear in front of you, but it requires Capricorn to look beyond the older version of yourself. I think opportunities are slowly starting to form around you. But the real question isn't just whether you'll receive them or not. It's whether you're truly ready to step into a bigger version of your own life. Because sometimes the thing keeping Capricorn stuck in one place for too long isn't a lack of ability. It's the fact that you've spent so many years living inside responsibility that you forgot you were allowed to want more for yourself too. And I think that's why this tarot reading feels so mature. It's not about flashy transformations. It's not pretending life suddenly becomes perfect overnight. It feels more like someone quietly rebuilding the foundation underneath their entire life. One small choice at a time, one healthier habit at a time, one moment of learning to say no to what keeps draining you, one moment of allowing yourself to rest without guilt. Those are the things truly changing Capricorn from the inside out. And when a person begins changing the way they see their own worth, the world around them slowly starts changing too. And that's also where this tarot reading begins opening into a very different kind of energy. A place where Capricorn may find themselves standing in front of a much bigger decision than they once imagined. And maybe the thing that's always been hardest for Capricorn was never really starting over. It's walking away from a version of life you've grown used to surviving inside for far too long. The Judgment card comes through here with a very unusual feeling. This doesn't feel like outside forces trying to push you into becoming someone different. It feels more like an awakening happening quietly within you. Like one day you wake up, look around at your life, and suddenly realize certain things no longer belong to the person you are now. A job that once made you proud now mostly leaves you feeling drained. A relationship you fought hard to keep now makes you feel smaller inside yourself. A a lifestyle you once called stable, now feels more like being trapped inside a cycle you've outgrown. And the hardest thing about Capricorn is you don't let go easily. You try to fix things. You try to endure a little longer. You carry things farther than most people ever would. Because deep down, Capricorn often believes that if you can just stay strong enough, you can keep everything from falling apart. But sometimes maturity stops looking like holding on to everything. Sometimes it looks more like being honest enough to recognize what has truly reached its ending. The Six of Swords card appears here and immediately brings up the image of someone quietly leaving behind waters that have been too emotionally loud for too long. Not running away, not giving up. Just finally understanding that there are places where the longer you stay, the more disconnected you become from your own energy. And I think some Capricorns are moving through a season like that right now. Maybe you haven't told anyone yet. On the outside, everything still looks normal. You still go to work, still answer messages, still handle your responsibilities every day. But internally, a very large distance has started forming between who you are becoming and the life you're currently living. And that distance is what's making Capricorn seriously think about change now. The Ace of Wands card carries such beautiful energy in this reading. It feels like a spark returning after spending far too long living only through pressure and responsibility. A new idea, a new plan, a new desire you once believed you no longer had the energy to begin. And maybe it still isn't fully clear yet. But Capricorn is starting to feel the desire to live differently, to wake up with more motivation again, to create something that makes you feel connected to life instead of just obligated to it, to move toward a future where you no longer feel stuck in survival mode all the time. And what I love most about the Ace of Wands card is that it doesn't demand you know the entire path right away. It only asks you to be honest with yourself about one thing. Do I still want to keep living this way? Because sometimes a new life doesn't begin with one massive decision. Sometimes it begins the moment you stop betraying what you truly feel inside. And the Lover's card in this reading feels deeper than romance alone. It feels more like a soul-level choice. One side is the older version of you, the one that learned to survive through pressure, control, and constant responsibility. And the other side is the version of you that's beginning to crave something slower, soft, more peaceful, and more real. And honestly, Capricorn feels caught somewhere between those two people right now. That's why this reading carries such strong rebirth energy. Not because you're becoming someone completely different, but because you're slowly removing the armor you've been wearing for far too long. Certain fears are being looked at differently now. The fear of failure, the fear of starting over, the fear of losing control, or even the fear that if you stop pushing so hard, everything might collapse around you. But the deeper I move into this energy, the more it feels like Capricorn is beginning to understand something important. A sustainable life cannot be built on a version of yourself that is constantly exhausted. And maybe for the first time in a very long time, you're allowing yourself to think about the future not only through responsibility, but through hope too. And that's also why the energy ahead begins to soften little by little, as if after all the walls, all the pressure, all the emotional armor, Capricorn is finally starting to reopen a part of the heart that's been closed for a very long time. And that also makes Capricorn's energy feel softer during this season in a very unusual way. Not weaker, not emotionally fragile in a way that feels out of control. More like someone who finally no longer wants to carry the full weight of life alone anymore. The King of Cups card comes through here and makes me think deeply about the kinds of emotions Capricorn rarely says out loud. You can care deeply about someone and still stay silent. You can be exhausted and still answer, "I'm fine." You can feel lonely and still continue handling responsibilities like nothing is wrong because you don't want anyone else to worry. Capricorn tends to hold everything inside for far too long, not because you're cold, but because you've grown used to being strong, used to being the one who fixes problems, the calmest person in the middle of chaos, the one who isn't allowed to fall apart first. But sometimes, constantly being strong slowly teaches the heart to become quiet too. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest things changing in this reading. The Queen of Cups card carries this feeling of Capricorn slowly relearning how to listen to your own emotions instead of only trying to control everything around you. You're beginning to realize that some wounds cannot be healed by working harder. Some empty spaces cannot be filled through achievement. And there are nights where, even after finishing every responsibility, you still feel strangely disconnected from yourself inside. What I really love about the emotional energy in this tarot reading is how mature it feels. Not overly dramatic, not chaotic. Not the kind of connection that feels like chasing or holding on at all costs. It feels more like being around someone who calms your nervous system down. Someone you can talk to without feeling like you need to prove anything. Without needing to always be the stronger person in the room. Without needing to hide the tired parts of yourself anymore. And honestly, for Capricorn, that may be one of the rarest feelings of all. The Page of Cups card brings in a very gentle kind of energy here. Like a heart that's been closed for a very long time, slowly opening back up to life again. Not in some dramatic overnight transformation, but maybe Capricorn begins to let people closer again, to speak more honestly about what you feel, or simply to stop isolating yourself the way you used to. I think some Capricorns became so focused on surviving, on financial stability, on carrying responsibility, that somewhere along the way, you forgot what peaceful love is even supposed to feel like. And this reading doesn't carry the feeling of an intense or overwhelming love story. It feels quieter than that, deeper than that, more emotionally mature than that. Like after so many emotional storms, Capricorn is finally beginning to want a connection where you feel safe enough to simply be yourself. And the Lovers card in this part of the reading feels especially important. Not only because of who may enter your life, but because Capricorn is learning how to choose yourself in a healthier way now. Choosing peace over drama. Choosing honesty over connections that constantly leave you anxious. Choosing people who make you feel like you can breathe instead of people who make you feel like you always need to earn acceptance. And honestly, that's a huge level of emotional growth. Because some people become more wounded and build even higher walls afterward. But Capricorn in this reading feels like someone learning how to soften without losing yourself. And that is not an easy process. Especially for people who've handled everything alone for far too long. But I think Capricorn's heart is slowly beginning to understand something very important. Being loved the right way should not feel like constantly guarding yourself or constantly fearing you'll lose who you are. It should feel like sitting beside someone and realizing you no longer have to fight all the time. And maybe that's why the deeper this tarot reading goes, the more healing the energy begins to feel. Almost as if Capricorn is slowly setting down pieces of old armor, preparing for a chapter of life that feels lighter than the one you've been carrying for so long. And maybe this is also the moment Capricorn begins to understand not everything you've carried needs to keep coming with you anymore. The Two of Swords card in this reading feels like someone who has been standing at a crossroads for far too long. Not because you don't know what you want, but because there's still a part of you that fears if you change something, life may suddenly stop feeling safe. I think Capricorn is the type of person who usually wants certainty before taking the next step. You want to see proof before you begin. You want to know the road is stable before putting your full energy into it. You want to make sure you don't make the same mistakes again. But sometimes, trying to control every possible outcome is exactly what keeps us standing still longer than we need to. And this tarot reading feels like it's gently reminding Capricorn that life does not always reveal the entire path in advance. Some doors only appear after you take the first step toward them. The Four of Cups card makes me think deeply about the old disappointments Capricorn may still be carrying internally. The times you gave your all and still felt unseen. Plans you once believed in deeply that never fully came together. Moments where you opened your heart only to pull yourself back in again afterward. And honestly, I think a part of Capricorn has become tired of trying again. And that's a very human feeling. When someone has lived through enough disappointment, they begin to hesitate even around good things. Not because they're negative, but because they've grown too familiar with having to pick themselves back up after every letdown. And yet what I really love about this energy is that it's not demanding Capricorn move fast. The Temperance card carries the feeling of a healing process that is very slow but very real. Like someone relearning balance after years of living only through responsibility. Learning how to rest without guilt. Learning how to work without driving yourself into exhaustion. Learning how to believe life can still shift, even when everything isn't perfectly figured out yet. And honestly, I think this is incredibly important for Capricorn. Because sometimes you delay your own new beginning simply because you don't feel ready enough yet. Not skilled enough, not stable enough, not perfect enough. But the Eight of Pentacles card brings through a very different message here. It doesn't say, wait until you become perfect. It says, start with what you have today, little by little, day by day. You do not need to rebuild your entire life overnight. Capricorn simply needs to begin rebuilding things in a way that no longer costs you your sense of self. And I think this is the season where you begin realizing that true maturity is not about how much pain you can tolerate. It's about knowing what is actually worth continuing to carry. Some pressures you once called responsibility, are beginning to feel more like burdens that never truly belong to you. Some relationships you tried to hold on to out of obligation now leave your spirit constantly tired. Some goals you once believed were absolutely necessary no longer fit the person you are becoming now. And letting those things go does not mean failure. Sometimes, that's what real growth actually looks like. The Temperance card also makes me think about someone learning how to turn old experience into wisdom instead of wounds. Capricorn is no longer carrying old pain as a way to punish yourself. You're beginning to use those experiences to understand yourself more deeply instead. Living slower, choosing more carefully, moving through life more calmly. And that kind of transformation is very quiet but incredibly powerful. Other people may not notice it right away. But internally, Capricorn is slowly becoming a much steadier version of yourself than before. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because, maybe for the first time in a very long time, you're beginning to stop fighting yourself. And once that starts happening, the entire energy of this tarot reading begins closing with a very different feeling. Almost like after everything Capricorn has carried and survived, you're finally moving closer to a life where your heart can truly rest again. And honestly, that may be the most beautiful part of this entire tarot reading. It's not trying to turn Capricorn into someone completely different. It feels more like life is slowly guiding you back toward yourself again, after spending far too long living inside pressure, responsibility, and emotional silence. And the Sun card appearing throughout this reading doesn't feel harsh or blinding to me. It feels more like early morning light coming through the window after days of gray skies, soft, but enough to make someone want to open their eyes again and start thinking about the future differently. I think Capricorn is entering a season where maturity is no longer measured by how much you can endure, but by whether you're honest enough to build a life that actually feels aligned with your heart. A life that may not be perfect, but allows you to breathe, to rest, to feel like a real human being again instead of someone who always has to stay strong for everyone else. And sometimes the things that truly change a person's life are not the massive dramatic moments. Sometimes they're the small choices repeated quietly every day. Choosing rest instead of constantly pushing yourself past your limits. Choosing peace over the things that keep your mind exhausted. Choosing to believe in your own worth a little more, even when not everything feels fully clear yet. And maybe that's why this reading feels so slow, but so honest at the same time. It feels like a house being rebuilt from the foundation underneath, not loud, not something everyone immediately notices, but little by little, something inside is changing. And honestly, I'm curious how many Capricorns listening to this have already started realizing they no longer want to go back to the older version of their life anymore. Whether it's a job, a relationship, or simply the way you once treated yourself, I think everyone listening probably has their own quiet answer to that question. And if readings like this, calm, deep, and a little more like a conversation than a performance, resonate with you, you're always welcome to stay here with me for the next one too. But for now, let everything unfold slowly. Like someone finally learning that peace does not always come from controlling everything around you. Sometimes it comes from no longer fighting yourself anymore.